Hi everyone, welcome to today's webcast on year-end employment tax considerations. Thanks for joining us today. Over the next half hour, our panellists and I are going to discuss a number of current hot topics as we approach the year-end. In particular, we'll be looking at topics that we're hearing from our clients all the time. We'll be focusing on the work you should be doing in these areas in advance of the year-end, rather than focusing just on the deadlines themselves. We can provide those separately. Please do feel free to ask questions through the portal provided, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. To start with some introductions, before we go on, I'd like to introduce myself. Firstly, my name is Ken O'Brien. I'm a director in our People and Organisation practice, and I lead our employment tax consulting team.
And I'm Catherine Brady, and I'm also a director in our People and Organisation practice, and I'm part of our short-term business visitor team.
And I'm Emily Burke. I'm a tax manager also in the People and Organisation team, and I'm a manager on the PwC's real-time reporting or PAYE modernisation team.
So that's who we are. What we're going to cover today, at least to kick off, will be just our employment tax approach overall. And as the year-end approaches, the first thing we want to do is just look at the work you should be doing as part of your year-end process, specifically as regards this particular year, 2018. As you'll find out as we go along, it's a particularly important year, and more particularly a particularly important year-end. I suppose I'd say, given factors such as revenue intervention programs, the global emphasis on compliance, and the increasing negative impact of reputational and brand damage, the need to ensure timely and accurate filings is greater than ever. So what work should you focus on between now and the various filing deadlines that you're going to have to face to meet these challenges? Well, from a very straightforward employment tax perspective, just to run through a few of them, you need to be reviewing your benefits. For instance, you need to be looking at company cars where you have them to assess the car benefit of kind and make sure it's correct. Looking at business mileage adjustments and so on, but also ensure that you're capturing the cost of other benefits, awards and other costs incurred in the provision of anything to employees that might give rise to a taxable benefit. The likes of staff entertainment, the likes of events, staff gifts, incentives, personal travel, that kind of thing. Really so that they're captured and ensure that they are going through payroll as required and returned accordingly in P35 returns. If you're paying motor mileage rates, ensure that they're paid within the relevant limits and within the revenue annual caps. Look at whether you need to file a small and regular benefits return, ensuring that you're capturing all the necessary data for that. And ensure also, importantly, that you actually make a submission to revenue to get agreement to make a small and regular benefits return. That's actually a statutory requirement that revenue quite strictly enforced these days, so make sure you do that. Make sure you review pension and PHI contributions to ensure that these are within the caps and limits that are appropriate. And have a look at profiles of your frequent business travellers. This is really important because you've got to ensure that the appropriate data is captured to support accurate filing. Now, Catherine's going to cover that in a lot more detail in a few minutes. Finally, and this is probably the last thing to discuss year-end process, at least in this context, given the arrival of real-time reporting from 1 January 2019, you've got to be ready for that, and there's work to be done in advance of that. I think that actually takes us nicely to our first specific topic with Emily. Emily, there's a huge change coming down the line in terms of real-time reporting. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I suppose, as you mentioned, it's coming in from 1 January 2019, so we have 1 month to go. So real-time reporting is also called PAYE modernisation, and it's a fundamental change in how PAYE reporting is done in Ireland. It was announced by Revenue 2 years ago, so there's been a decent lead-in time to it, but it is going live in a month's time. And it impacts every employer in the country, so it's going to be a very big deal. And I suppose the main premise of it is that full and accurate details of your payroll needs to be reported to revenue in real time. So every time you run your payroll, and that's quite a fundamental change from what was done before. What happened before, I suppose, was that there was revenue got a P30 return with very little information on it every month. So after the month had ended. And then at the year end, so after the year end, the P35 return gave detailed information in relation to employees' personal details and the split out of, I suppose, the tax that was remitted and who that related to. Whereas now, that obligation, so that very detailed information return will go to revenue before or at the time you actually pay your employees. So it's increasing the number of reports to revenue, the detail of them, and bringing it during the year. There's also a big fundamental change, I suppose, in terms of all the P forms will be abolished, so no more P45s, P60s, P35s. There will be a statutory return every month instead of once at the year end. And so I suppose why this is important is any non-compliance with real-time reporting will be very visible to revenue. It'll be very easy for revenue to audit and discover non-compliance because they'll have a lot of information much earlier during the tax year, which they only got after the year end, previously. So I suppose with all that said around your year-end process for 2018 and all the good stuff that you mentioned that employers will be doing for their 2018 year-end to make sure that their P35 is accurate, that true up at the year-end won't actually be available during from 2019 onwards, and that's something that employers need to be aware of.
So this is really just one of probably the most fundamental changes we've seen for employers around payroll reporting, PAYE and so on in a considerable number of years. So with that in mind, what are we seeing coming from the revenue? Because is it the case that you have to make this up as you go along? Is it the case of having to sort of improvise? What are we hearing from the revenue on this, and what are the kind of responses from clients in relation to what we're hearing from revenue?
I suppose, and as I mentioned, there has been a 2-year lead-in time to this, and what revenue wants, they've quite clearly articulated at this stage in terms of the parameters of what needs to be reported. That is very clear, but also what revenue expects how revenue expects employers to engage with this. So I think the first main point is revenue expects employers to be ready and to engage with real-time reporting from day one. They put a lot of time, investment in this and into educating employers in the run-up. So they very much expect employers to fully engage with this from day one. Revenue are also in print as saying that year-end processes, they're aware that they're currently a relatively normal thing in within many employers' payroll processes, but they're very clear that year-end processes and true-ups are not actually in line with PAYE regulations, and they will not be accepted from 2019 onwards, so they cannot continue under real-time reporting. And this was the last thing, or a main message is revenue's consistently been saying this for the last 2 years, is that amendments, corrections, things like lacking PPSNs, late submissions, they're all going to feed into revenue's risk analysis software. So it may give rise to a more high incidence of audit if you have those kind of poor processes requiring a lot of adjustments to your reporting.
So the kind of stuff you used to do after the fact to ensure compliance and accurate returns simply aren't available. And in fact, not only are they not available, they're now red flags.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that gives rise to challenges for employers, because there's a reason, I suppose, why year-end processes have developed over time. It's because there are challenges that employers have with getting everything into payroll 100% accurately and in real time. Those challenges are usually around things that are reported in payroll but aren't paid out through payroll, so the likes of notional pay. So those are more challenging to report in real time, and there's a reliance that the payroll team may have on other stakeholders within the business or even outside the business to ensure that real-time reporting is accurate and in real time. For the likes of key ones that we'll see that our clients are engaging with us in relation to how to redesign their processes around are the likes of equity, short-term businesses, visitors and assignees, because they're actually on a foreign payroll, but there may need to be some reporting done on an Irish payroll, and again that'll need to be in real time. Expenses that are delivered outside of payroll in an expenses system, but for whatever reason they have a tax requirement for the likes of professional subscriptions. Benefits in kind, you mentioned earlier, the likes of CAR, BAK and true-ups, that you can't do that at the year end anymore. You'll need to have a much tighter process. And revenue's putting some clear guidance in writing in relation to all of these items.
So that's a long list, and now I'm scared. So I've done nothing. I'm listening to you. I'm just not ready for this now. If there were 4 or 5 things I could do now to try to get ready, even at this very late stage, what are they?
I think the first thing is make sure to do something. So start now. If you haven't started to do that, you start now. But more seriously, I suppose, what are you currently truing up for in your 2018 process? What are those things that you're truing up for, and why are you truing up for them at the year end? What do you need? How can you tighten that up? Identify those things that you're making adjustments. Basically, anything that you're putting through your reporting for POE after it's actually been delivered to the employee. Why are you not doing that in real time and fix it from 1 January 2019? Engage with other stakeholders who have an impact on that reporting, who have control over that data, like the equity team, like the HR team that onboards employees, gets PPSNs, the expenses team, maybe the infrastructure team in relation to your cars, your employees in relation to mileage logs. Engaging with other stakeholders that have an impact on payroll being right or wrong, or payroll reporting being right or wrong. Check your payroll software, I would say. This is not all about software, but software will be a factor because most employers in Ireland now will be using some form of software. So you want to be confident that that your software is going to work from 1 January 2019, particularly because you may actually be reporting in advance. If you might need to run before Christmas if your pay date was the 1st of January. So that's something you need to do immediately, and also to figure out which software you're going to use. Are you going to use an integrated solution that reports directly to revenue, or are you going to upload, process in a software solution, but then take files out of it and upload them to Ross yourself? And then the last point I would say is employee engagement. I don't think that should be forgotten, because while the employer will have a lot to do around getting the reporting correct, there is an employee engagement piece, because employees are not going to get P60s from 2019, and they're going to actually be also able to see some of the information that employers are reporting in real time on the employees' access to Ross, the My Account. So that may give rise to questions, particularly if you're amending submissions or you're going back and changing things. So that's something that you need to plan as well and engage your employees so that they don't have concerns.
So what you're saying basically, Emily, is that notwithstanding what an employee, what the revenue are saying to employers and even to employees, it's important for employers to communicate with employees, because that's where the questions will come into land first.
Yeah, and I think planning and having a strategy around that will help to manage, getting the message out there. Will limit individual queries, so that you're not taking up all your time in January, February managing all of those individual queries.
Okay, thanks for that. Emily, you mentioned business visitors actually just as you were going along there, and that's a really hot topic right now. We're getting a lot of that from our clients, and we see a lot of it in general discussion out there in the tax world. Catherine, tell us what you've been seeing in the market in relation to short-term visitors, and how hot a topic is it?
Yeah, so I suppose short-term business visitors is certainly something that we're seeing tax authorities, not only in Ireland but across the globe, looking at a lot more closely. And this is putting increased pressure on employers to not only know where their people are but what they're doing. So I suppose firstly, who is a short-term business visitor? I suppose put very simply, it's a person who's employed and paid by a foreign company but who spends time working in Ireland. So it's far more than your traditional assignee type arrangement where a person is sent by their employer to work for a particular structured period in Ireland. It's your UK employee who commutes to Ireland for 1 or 2 days a week. It's your US employee who comes to Ireland for meetings, a couple of meetings a year, or a few meetings a year. It's your German employee who comes here to work on a particular project for a short period of time. Or conceivably, I suppose, it's a Dutch employee who is a remote worker, happens to be in Ireland, starts working here, and that could be unbeknownst to their employer. So I suppose in certain circumstances, the fact that these people are spending time working in Ireland creates obligations and risks for the employer, such as withholding tax obligations. And the difficulty for the company or the employer is to ensure that they're aware that these people are here and that they're trying to track the amount of time that they're spending here.
And I was about to ask that very question about tracking and understanding who's here. And I've spoken to clients who have seen foreign registered cars in the car park for a week, and then for 2 weeks, and then for 3 weeks, from multiple different countries, some from EU jurisdictions, some from non-EU jurisdictions. What should I be worried about when that sort of thing happens?
Yeah, so I suppose the rules in relation to short-term business visitors have changed in Ireland in April of this year. and they're effective from the 1st of January 2018, so the current year. So there's a few things that we need to be considering when we're looking at short-term business visitors. Firstly, where the person is coming from, whether they're coming from a country with which we have a double taxation agreement or not. And this is quite important, as there's different thresholds that apply depending on where the person is coming from. A few other things are around how frequently they're here, how long they're spending, and I suppose the role that they have, and the duties that they're performing here. Where we're looking at persons coming from a double taxation agreement country, 60 work days is the focus. So where a person is here for less than 60 work days in a single year, there's no PAYE obligation or no withholding tax obligation, and the revenue don't need to know about it. If we look at someone coming for 2 consecutive years, that 60 work day principle is maintained, but on average across the 2 years. So where a person is less than 60 work days across the 2 years, or 2 consecutive years, again, no withholding obligation, and the revenue don't need to know about it. But when a person spends greater than 60 work days in a single year or across 2 consecutive years, there's no automatic release from PAYE, and an application needs to be made to revenue for a dispensation. Now, dispensation is authorisation for revenue that PAYE need not apply, and it's granted where certain conditions are met, including treaty conditions. Now, revenue have challenged a number of applications that have gone in the past in terms of the role that the person is performing while they're in Ireland, and whether that's suggesting, I suppose, that the duties are being performed for the Irish company as opposed to the foreign employer. The new rules that were released in April did look at this, and they talk about integral duties, but still feel this is going to remain an area of contention with revenue, and it's an area that when applications are going in, it's going to be looked at very, very closely. That application for dispensation needs to be made within 30 days of the person coming to Ireland, which is increased from 21 days, which is positive, but still very tight. And they're generally not granted retrospectively. Now, in the new rules, revenue have stated that they will not penalise a company where it was not overly apparent at the time that the person came in that they were going to spend over 60 work days here, but that remains to be seen how that's going to plan out in practice. The new guidance also talks about ongoing presence, and this is where a person is in Ireland or has a presence in Ireland, working in Ireland for 2 or more consecutive years. And here it's less about the number of days piece and more about the consecutive years piece. So in the way the rules are currently written, where a person spending time working in Ireland for any amount of days across 2 or more consecutive years, a PAYE dispensation needs to be applied for. Now, revenue have stated that in this particular circumstance they don't expect to receive dispensations until 2020, and that they're open to discussion on it. So it's an area that's evolving, I suppose, with revenue, and we're hoping that they'll take a pragmatic approach on that. Now, what I've spoken about so far, I suppose, relates to a person coming from a country with which we have a double taxation agreement. And where a person is coming from a country where we don't, such as Brazil, the rules get even tighter again. And that 60 workday rule that we were talking about is halved to 30 days. So where a person spends greater than 30 days in a single year or across 2 consecutive years, a PAYE obligation arises, and there's no option to obtain a dispensation. So it is quite
so this is scary stuff. So what we're saying is really that I've got to get my dispensations, or if I fail to do that, I'm not compliant.
Absolutely.
And to be able to get the dispensations, I have to be able to track people, and not just from the point of view of are they here and where they come from, but where their original country sits within the overall scheme of things. Are they an EU country? Are they a treaty country? Are they something else? So we've got to track all of that. Absolutely. And then track their actual mobility. Right. So very onerous.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap up on short-term business visitors, I mean, what should companies be doing to ensure that they're compliant with the new rules? I mean, we've got a compliance issue in any event come January with real-time reporting and so on. But in terms of this, what we need to do right now to be compliant, given that the rules are already here, and then as that leads on into real-time reporting from January, what are the 3 or 4 things companies should be doing?
Yeah, so I suppose 3 things really: track, assess and comply, and the big one is track, as you said, Ken. So a company needs to have robust tracking systems and processes in place so that they can easily identify those people who could potentially fall within the Irish tax net. and I suppose then to assess whether something needs to be done in relation to those individuals. Does a PAYE dispensation need to be applied for, or is a PAYE obligation arising? And then to comply, so to apply for those dispensations within that time frame of 30 work days, or 30 days, and also to operate PAYE where necessary through a shadow payroll.
So
very much real time, isn't it? So you really do have to track in real time, because you have to identify those cases and get them onto payroll if you're not going to meet the conditions for a dispensation.
Because the time limits are so tight, and you've got to make sure you know really quickly what you need to know to take the appropriate step, be it to operate PAY or dispensation.
And equally from a real time reporting perspective, if you don't operate once you've identified them, you're out of compliance for real time reporting as well.
Okay, thanks for that. We're getting a bit tight on time, so I'm going to take a couple of questions. First question is going to be for you, Catherine, actually. And it's kind of the $64,000 question. It's a question we're asked all the time by our clients, what's everybody else doing about this? And it's a perfectly legitimate, reasonable question to ask. So, what are companies generally doing around identifying and tracking their traveller populations?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a question that we're asked all the time when we're talking about short-term business visitors, I suppose. It's a problem that the majority of companies are having, and where to start. And there's no one-size-fits-all, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. So a couple of things that we're seeing people do, or companies do, some companies are taking, I suppose, a light touch approach, where they're identifying a population whereby they are aware that these people are on the move, and they're asking them to complete calendars or to have a GPS tracking system on their phone, using a mobile app, and using that information to analyse whether an obligation arises. Other companies are going a step further and using corporate data and having regular reviews of corporate data, such as travel records or expense claims or visitor check-ins when people come from other countries, the visitor check-in that they have to go through, and analysing those on a regular basis. Now, I suppose there's also, the best-in-class kind of option as well, whereby we let technology do the work, where it's a fully managed service, so that corporate data feeds into a bigger system whereby flags go up where a person reaches a certain threshold, and it identifies that there's an issue with a particular person. So I suppose it's a difficult one, and there's no easy solution, but I would say the key is to have the ability to point to some tracking mechanism where you're attempting to track your mobile population, in the event that revenue are asking, that you have that ability to point towards some tracking mechanism.
So this is really resource heavy. Our company's going to need to kind of, staff up for this. They're going to need to get resources. What are companies expected to respond in terms of the resource demands?
Yeah, so I suppose, like I said, it is quite resource heavy. It depends on the option that the company goes with in terms of trying to find a solution or trying to track. So there are technology solutions there whereby the corporate data can feed into a bigger system, and the output of that would be that there's a flag going up to say that certain things have to happen around that. So it does depend on the way it's operated within the company.
It's not going to be one size fits all.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Emily, a question I should have asked, and in fact crossed my mind to ask, and I didn't, but somebody else has, and it's a really good question. We outsource our payroll. What's the problem? We don't expect real-time reporting to be an issue because somebody else looked after our payroll reporting. What do we say to that?
Yeah, and this is something that a lot of my clients and indeed clients of the rest of our colleagues have been asking, especially where they do outsource payroll to a payroll processor or a payroll service provider. The question is, they're going to be ready. They've told us they're ready for real-time reporting. I mean, this doesn't seem to be a big deal for me. It's going to be grand, and they're ready to report. And that's one part of it, ensuring that you have the software available or the payroll processor available who's able and understands the new system and what needs to be reported and how to upload and what date to report it on. That's one part of it, but I think it misses the point as to kind of the fact that the risk sits with the employer. Your outsourced payroll processor receives information from you and processes it when they receive it from you. But if they don't receive it, if they don't receive full details of all pay and benefits in kind, or in relation to your shadow payroll cases, to process that, when the benefits are enjoyed or when the person is actually in Ireland and needs to be reported, it's not their fault, for want of a better word, that they haven't processed it. You haven't told them to process it. It's the employer's obligation to instruct.
So you just actually touched on something important here, and you've mentioned a number of different payroll elements, pay elements, remuneration, reward elements, all of which can be dealt with in different parts of an organisation. So are you saying there's multiple stakeholders in terms of a company's response to real-time reporting?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I suppose revenue considers an employer as an employer. They're not sort of cognizant of, okay, the payroll team doesn't have control over equity. That's not the way revenue sees it. Revenue sees an employer as an employer and considers that the employer should be able to get all their ducks in a row, all their people aligned, all the different teams or stakeholders within the business aligned to ensure that payroll and all of the information that needs to feed into payroll, ensure that happens for real-time reporting to be accurate in real time.
So are we saying get a project team together?
Yeah, if it's not already together, I would say definitely get that project team together. I appreciate it's difficult, in the run up to Christmas to get people aligned, but it needs to happen. And I mean, it's you spoke earlier about employment tax risk, at the top of the discussion, and the risk sits with the business. If the business gets hit with a revenue audit, there's a lot of stakeholders that are responsible for payroll being right or wrong. If they don't give the information in real time, then they're part of the reason why the business or the employer was out of compliance with its real-time reporting obligations. So it can't just sit with payroll if payroll isn't responsible for things like expenses, things like benefits in kind.
So the cliche of real-time reporting is real-time risk is fair.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we're out of time. We wanted to cover areas that our clients have told us are important to them, and hopefully that's what we've done over the past 30 minutes. That said, please do feel free to contact any of us with any additional questions you might have. We're sorry that we didn't have time to get to all of your questions, but as I think you've seen, a couple of the questions were very insightful and very much on the money. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I hope you found it informative and insightful. I'd like to thank Catherine and Emily for their input. We hope to see you again on another of our webinars coming soon.